Hi, this is Lori Daybell, and this is my Wiki 4 assignment on characteristics of autism spectrum disorder. So, looking at the causes of ASD, we don't really know. The cause is unknown. But here are some thoughts. Today, the CDC reports 1 in 68 children have autism spectrum disorder, and this number is on the rise. And although the exact cause is unknown, there have been several domains of thought. The first is that autism is caused by biology and genetics. We think this because we've seen biological links through different family members in different generations having autism. Autism is caused by the lack of relationships formed between mothers and children or some traumatic event that caused the child to reject the world around him. This isn't a prevailing theory now, but in the past, like a lot of things, we blamed moms. The other one is that autism is caused by environmental factors such as advanced maternal age, contact from chemical substances or infectious diseases, poor health of the mother like hypertension or diabetes. This is also where the false claim made that vaccinations caused autism was floated, and that's really, I think, done a lot of harm. But this is the section it was in. The final one is not really so much a cause of ASD, but it's just a way of thinking of it, that it isn't a disability, it's a different ability, and neurodiversity should be accepted as a new way to view the world. It gives us a window into what does the world look like for someone with autism. The most widely scientific accepted view today is that autism is a complex set of environmental and genetic factors that lead to a neurological disorder with consequences for brain functioning. Let's talk about the cognitive characteristics of autism spectrum disorder. Kids with ASD often have weak central coherence. That just means they have a difficult time looking at the big picture, and they're often stuck on the little details. This impacts comprehension and also understanding. Lack of cognitive flexibility is also seen with kids with ASD. They're often really rigid in their thinking, and they struggle greatly with changes in their environment or routine. Everything is literal, and inferences are not always understood. Also, you see a lack of visuomotor coordination with difficulties in things like tracking a ball or focusing on the letters that may float on the page. Next, let's talk about neurological characteristics of ASD. Neurological characteristics often include impairments in social interaction, delayed and limited communication, and restricted interests and repetitive behaviors. This is where you see things like STEM behaviors and echolalia and being very hyper-focused on one topic. My daughter, who has autism, is super interested in all things Roblox. My husband, who has Asperger's syndrome, very much consumed with all things train video games. It's interesting. They also have delayed communication skills, and social interaction is really difficult. The other thing that I just put it here, I'm not sure if this is exactly where we're going to fit it, but I want to talk about comorbid neurological conditions that impact brain health, like epilepsy, motor deficits, sleep dysfunction, ADHD, self-injurious behavior, conduct disorder, and mood disorders. These all also impact those with ASD at a higher rate than their neurotypical peers. In my family, sleep dysfunction is huge. Now we're going to talk about the sensory characteristics of ASD. 94% of children with ASD also have sensory processing disorder. They have a lower baseline of arousal, vestibular and proprioceptive input. That need for, I have one that likes to spin around and around and around and around. And my daughter will get up and randomly just run for the input of that being out of breath. They have a higher reaction to taste, touch, and smell. This sometimes interferes with eating and nutrition. You often see really picky eaters in those because of this, and then you see lack of nutrition, and then that kind of becomes a very not good loop. Sensory input is often either too loud, you have a hypersensitivity, or too muted, you have a hyposensitivity, or it's a mixture of both. Oftentimes, sensory deficits may reflect attempts to manage and control the environment that seems super chaotic and sometimes painful. A sensory diet can help keep those with sensory processing disorder in an optimal zone of arousal. Whenever you see behavior of kids with ASD, stop for a minute and think, is it behavior or is it sensory? Moving on, let's talk about behavior. Here's a list of some behaviors that are often seen in those with autism spectrum disorder. An impairment of social relationships, difficulty making or keeping friends, difficulty with social communication. How do I join and participate in a conversation? And what do those nonverbal behaviors mean? Echolalia and regression of speech development, saying something over and over and over again. A lack of eye contact. Interested in a very narrow focus of topics. Prefers to be alone. Repetitive motor movements and odd play with toys. Inappropriate attachment to objects and rigidity in routine. Hyperactive or non-responsive in bright or noisy environments. Does not respond to his or her name or like to be touched. And an increase in temper tantrums and a difficulty in calming down. Let's talk about communication characteristics of ASD. Often, a deficit in communication causes an increase in behavior. While communication deficit is a core component of ASD, the extent of it depends on the intellectual ability and social development of the person with ASD. There's delayed development of language skills and understanding of what others say. Language deficits include repetitive or rigid language, such as echolalia, narrow interests. Some, about 10%, have exceptional abilities in one subject area. There's poor nonverbal conversation skills and an uneven language development. Often, you have students with ASD that are nonverbal or unintelligible. The use of an augmentative and alternative communication system, an AAC, sign language, gestures, a speech-generating device, or a picture exchange communication system are often used to help them communicate more effectively with each other and peers and to get their needs met. Let's talk about social characteristics of ASD. It's really interesting. One, they prefer to be alone because it's hard to socialize when you have social deficits. But then you have feelings of loneliness and anxiety. You have difficulty forming relationships and keeping them long term. You have an inability to relate well to others, and you have very limited interests. You have difficulty with reciprocal conversations. All of these deficits really make it difficult to have positive interactions with those in our environment, making with friends, and later on with colleagues and peers. Social skills groups and video modeling are often used as research-based practices to meet the social needs of individuals with ASD. And this ends my wiki presentation on the characteristics of ASD. To conclude, let's just touch on the fact that no one person with ASD is the same as another. It is a spectrum. And so while I talked in a lot of you see this and you see that through this, not every person with ASD is going to look the same. And it's because of this wide spectrum of abilities and disabilities that I believe autism is often underdiagnosed or diagnosed late. And current research really should continue to focus on ways we can recognize all pieces of autism to improve early development and identification early identification so that we can start helping these children when the accommodations and research-based practices are the most effective. I